IELTS, Sample Listening Test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to section 1 of your question booklet. Section 1. You will hear a conversation between a student and someone at an accommodation agency. First, look at questions 1 and 2. For each of the questions, 3 alternatives are given. Decide which of the alternatives, A, B, or C, best fits what you hear on the tape, and circle the appropriate letter. You will see that there is an example which has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to the example will be played first.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm looking for a place to rent near the university.
What are you after? A house? A flat? A room?
Well, preferably a house if that's possible. There are 3 of us looking all together. We thought we might share if we could find something suitable.
The student says he wants to rent a house, so A has been circled. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 and 2.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm looking for a place to rent near the university.
What are you after? A house? A flat? A room?
Well, preferably a house if that's possible. There are 3 of us looking all together. We thought we might share if we could find something suitable.
So, something near the university?
Yes, if that's at all possible. We're all students, so it'd be good if we could find something within walking distance of the campus. None of us has a car and we don't want to have to take public transport.
Yeah, well, everybody wants that, of course.
Yeah, I suppose they do.
Are you in your first year?
No, I've been here a year already. Last year we all lived in a hall of residence. That was really great. Even the food wasn't too bad. We had a lot of fun there, but in the second year they kick you out into the real world.
You now have a short time to look at questions 3 to 10. As you listen to the rest of the conversation, fill in the numbered spaces 3 to 6 in the table and answer questions 7 to 10 by circling the appropriate letters.
Okay, so let me have a look and see what we've got. Well, there's a 2-bedroom house in Newtown which is quite cheap.
Oh, that'd be good because it's very near the university. But if we all want our own rooms, it isn't really big enough.
Too small. Give that one a miss?
Yeah, I think so. Got anything else?
What about this? 3-bedroom flat close to the university. It's $400 a week.
Oh, that's too expensive.
All right. Well, here's something that might interest you. It's a 3-bedroom house with garden.
Not bothered about the garden, but where is it?
Near the airport.
That's miles from the university.
Yes, it is quite far, but it's reasonably priced at $250 a week. Why don't you go and have a look?
Oh, all right, we will. Can I have the address?
Right. Well, it's at 14A Station Road, Botany.
Is anyone living there at the moment?
No, it's vacant.
And does it have any furniture?
Well, it says here that it's partially furnished.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, there's a kitchen table and chairs, 2 single beds, a double bed, 2 wardrobes, a kitchen cooker, and a washing machine. Not bad, really, for the money.
Is there a fridge?
It doesn't mention it here. I can let you have the key, and you can pop round and see for yourself.
Right, thanks. We'll do that.
Hello, you're back. How did you find the house?
Well, not bad. It's certainly large enough, and there's quite a big garden. But it's completely overgrown. You can hardly get out the back door because the grass is so high. We'd have to have it tidied up a bit before we moved in.
Okay.
The kitchen is fine, but there's an awful smell throughout the house.
Well, the place hasn't been occupied for a couple of months, so that's probably why it's a bit musty. It'll be fine when you open up the windows and let some fresh air in.
Yeah, well, I think the landlord ought to pay to clean the carpets at least.
I can put that to him, though I'm not sure whether he'll agree. We can but ask.
Okay. Well, if he does, we'd probably be interested.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear an extract from a radio program. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen and complete the notes by filling in the numbered spaces 11 to 14.
Hello and welcome to Cooking Capers. And this week we're looking at that most versatile and aromatic of plants, a fairly recent addition to the list of Australian agricultural produce, but nevertheless a great favourite today, ginger. And in the studio to tell us all about it is Monica Maxwell.
Ginger, is one of my personal favourite spices, and I've got a number of wonderful recipes to share with you later on in the program. So what is ginger? Well, actually, it's a spicy-tasting root with an aromatic flavour. It's related to the bamboo family and has 100 different uses in the kitchen. The Chinese have cultivated it for years, particularly to use in medicine, though you're probably more familiar with its culinary uses. But first, let's take a brief look at its history before we look at how it can be used, because it's had a very interesting history. Ginger originated in the southern provinces of China and in India, where it had been used in medicines and food preparation for over 5,000 years. The early traders who came upon the plant took it to many parts of the world, such as Nigeria, the West Indies, Central America, East Africa, and even Indonesia. Ginger became extremely popular because of its exotic aromatic properties and was highly valued by spice traders in the 17th and 18th centuries because they were able to sell it back in Europe for a very good price. Although Australia is now the largest producer of ginger in the world, it wasn't grown in Australia until the early 20th century.
Now look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk, and complete the table and the fact sheet by filling in numbered spaces 15 to 20.
Apparently, some pieces of raw ginger found their way to an area about 100 kilometres north of Brisbane in Queensland earlier this century. The comparatively high rainfall and humidity in this area produced conditions which are perfect for growing ginger. So it became well established. But in the early days, the relatively high cost of production placed it at a disadvantage in the market by comparison with the much cheaper ginger produced by other countries with lower production costs. Then, in 1941, the supply of ginger to Australia started to run out. Remember, this was in the middle of the Second World War, when everything was in short supply. This provided the perfect opportunity for the Queensland growers to expand their production and sales. 5 local farmers got together and formed a cooperative association in a place called Buderim. They started with only £25 between them. That was in the days when Australian currency was pounds, not dollars. So they set up the company with 2 wooden vats and 14 tons of raw ginger. But they went on to become the most successful ginger farmers in the world. In fact, nearly all the world's ginger now comes from the Buderim Ginger Factory in Queensland. 40% of the production is used in Australia, and the remaining 60% is exported overseas to places like Europe, North America, South Africa, and even to Asia, where it originated in the first place. So now let's move on to looking at ways of using ginger in the kitchen.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. In this section, you will hear a radio interview with a scientist, Dr. Clark, on the subject of global warming. First, look at questions 21 to 25. As you listen, complete sentences 21 to 25.
Dr. Clark, global warming was the threat of the 1980s, but it seems to have fizzled out of people's minds. Why do you think that is?
Yes, in a way, you're right. I think scientists have become occupied with the task of trying to find out whether it really is happening, and, if so, whether it's caused by human activity.
A greenhouse effect is, after all, a natural phenomenon.
Yes. As we know, naturally occurring gases float above us, acting as insulators that prevent heat being radiated into space.
And the fear is that the insulation might get thicker.
Yes. And because of this, the Earth might get warmer.
The latest prediction we've heard is that temperature will increase by about 1/3 of a degree every 10 years. What are your feelings?
Well, this prediction is difficult to make. You see, the global climate is the result of a web of influences. Who is to say that a simple action such as adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere will not have several effects which might even cancel each other out?
And I understand that the prediction is hard to verify, whatever.
Precisely.
Why is that?
Because the Earth's temperature surges and subsides naturally. In fact, the best way of detecting global temperature change is to measure the temperature of the oceans as accurately as possible.
And this avoids the sort of seasonal fluctuations of the temperature of landmass?
Yes. In fact, an understanding of the oceans is crucial to understanding how the global climate works. The ocean transports heat around the globe. It's like a great reservoir of heat. A tiny change in sea surface temperature denotes a huge change in the amount of heat it is storing.
Now look at questions 26 to 30. As you listen to the rest of the interview, answer questions 26 to 30.
And now I understand you're looking at ways of refining this measurement of ocean temperature.
Yes. For a long time we've measured it by placing thermometers in buoys bobbing in the oceans, and also when ships draw water through their engines.
It's also been done by satellite, hasn't it?
Yes, but now data from a more promising system is being collected. This is the European Along-Track Scanning Radiometer, or ATSR, a much simpler name. The ATSR orbits the Earth above us.
And what stage are you at with this?
Well, it's been up there 2.5 years now. It's an infrared detector that senses the Earth's temperature with great accuracy, and this is what we need. We have to be able to separate out random changes in temperature.
I believe there are other advantages as well.
There are several. Every few days it covers the entire Earth, so it produces large quantities of data. It measures the temperature from 2 angles, which allows correction for any effects that the intervening atmosphere may be having on its readings. Its field of view has a width of 500 kilometers, and it measures the temperature to 0.3 degrees centigrade.
And it should go on for years.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Clark, for talking to us today. And now over to you, Sue, in our Manchester.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You're going to hear a talk about an animal conservation course. First look at questions 31 to 40. As you listen, complete the notes by filling in numbered spaces 31 to 40.
Well, we're delighted to have the opportunity to hear from Sue Gent, our specialist on student affairs, about a course with a difference.
Thank you, Tony. Many people think that conservation is just about saving fluffy animals. What they don't realize is that it is a war to save the human race from committing suicide. Strong words, but this was the belief of the famous conservationist Gerald Durrell. Gerald Durrell was an English conservationist who dedicated his life to the conservation of animals, and among his many achievements was the establishment of a zoo in Jersey. There, he set up the Wildlife Preservation Trust, which conducts courses on preservation and attracts students from developing countries. Many of these students are making their first trip away from home. The students who come to Jersey to study are of all ages. The first was a man called Yusuf Mungru, who came from Mauritius in 1977. He was particularly interested in the conservation of large African birds. When he arrived, there were only 4 Mauritius falcons, these are big birds of prey, left in his African homeland. Now, since he has returned, the numbers have increased to 200. When Yusuf first arrived in Jersey, he was unused to the freezing winters, so he liked to spend time in the reptile house. He said it was the warmest place on the island. So let's look at how students are chosen to participate in one of the zoo's programs. Well, according to their teacher, their work or study must involve animals. The zoo is proud of the fact that many of its graduates are now in positions to influence the way animals are kept and utilised for conservation. Once they start the course, the students have to spend a lot of time studying the English language. In addition to that, they also have to cover many aspects of animal conservation. This year, 27 students from 21 different countries are already waiting to participate in the intensive training programs at the zoo. In a Principles and Practice course, they learn both theory and practice. First, they learn the theory of conservation biology, working in areas such as veterinary medicine. Then they move into the practical part of the course and work with the zookeepers, where they learn to care for the animals. Over 350 full-time students have graduated since Yusuf Mungru, and, like him, some graduates have made big names for themselves in the zoo and conservation world. A former Chinese student is now responsible for captive breeding and conservation throughout his country, and a student from Mauritius who trained at the zoo is the present conservation officer for Mauritius.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. End of side 2.